Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Today's video will be a bit different, as it is a response to someone I know personally and someone I grew up with through our time as members of the same Boy Scout troop. In this video, I will be responding to conservative podcaster Kevin Phares over his coverage of the raid on Mar-A-Lago. For those unfamiliar with Ferris, he is the host of the Speechless podcast, a conservative show hosted by the equally conservative radio platform Cities 92.9. which is based out of Bloomington Normal. He's the current president of Turning Point USA's Illinois State University chapter and has been a guest on shows such as The Paul Garcia Show, another young conservative podcast. Ferris's content is largely critical of liberals, progressives, and other such content creators in the political sphere, which isn't too surprising. He is a conservative after all. But there is an element of his content that presents itself as open to the so-called marketplace of ideas. One need only look at some of his guest appearances and you can get a sense of where he stands in the larger rhetorical sphere of online politics.
I'd say building here, and I really do appreciate being able to come on. You've had a lot of my good friends at Cities 92.9 on, and I'm really proud to be able to say I will now be on the Paul Garcia show.
Oh, my man.
I'm so excited.
You are too kind. I was just on your show a second ago. It was a great time. I've learned a lot from you. You're very smart. You're very articulate. You're very conservative. And on this show, you know, I've had people from the left and on the right on my show, and we've talked, and it's been great conversations. I agree with some points on both sides of the aisle, actually. People know that I kind of lean conservative for sure, but across different issues, it varies. I want to ask you, and also I should tell the people, how old are you?
I'm 21.
21 years old. Wow, you're destined for really great things because, as I said, you're very intelligent, you're very articulate, you know what you're doing when it comes to radio, when it comes to speaking. You've spoken at many events, and you've done so very well. All that said, enough flattery. Tell us, what does it mean to be a conservative in your mind?
That's a big question, Paul, because I think it can mean different things to different people. I mean, at a very base level, I think that there's the issues that really bind every conservative together, and that's usually limited government and allowing yourself to keep more of the money you earn. So those kind of go hand in hand because you got limited government, meaning there's less government in your life. And if there's going to be less government, it doesn't need as much funding, so then we can lower our taxation. And that's pretty much what can bind every conservative, bring every conservative together. Most of the time, you usually have support for the police and law and order because we want to be able to protect the things that we've worked so hard to build. But then there's also the issues that kind of can be more contended in the conservative realm. I mean, gay marriage is one that's still kind of debated among conservatives. I know it seems somewhat settled by society somewhat. I mean, now there's all this talk regarding the right to privacy and what if Obergefell could actually be overturned. That's a debate to be had, but gay marriage is one that a lot of conservatives can still fight on a bit. Abortion, most are mainly pro-life, but there's still kind of some of those questions as should there be exceptions? At what point should an abortion exception be? So what does it mean to be conservative? What it really means is to be pro-America at the end of the day. Because there are all these issues, and there are the few that can bind everyone, but not all conservatives are the same. Mm-hmm. Like it's about perspective, really. I mean, when you go into a paint shop, Paul, you could ask for red. Let's say red means conservative, red means Republican, whatever. There's going to be a bunch of different shades of red that they're going to show you.
Insofar as Ferris describes his view of it, conservatism is about limited government and, to some extent, an understanding of the diversity of thought within his given movement. In other words, conservatism is a diverse movement with a variety of perspectives to be considered and how best to protect people's properties, business, etc. There are, of course, more elements to his description than those he brought up, but generally speaking, those are the themes that remain constant among conservatives at large, according to Ferris. Such thought is probably one of the many reasons cities chose him for their platform, as it hosts a wide variety of conservative and sometimes reactionary political commentators such as Sean Hannity, Officer Tatum, and Ben Shapiro, to name a few. It isn't hard to see why such a view of conservatism might be appealing to some in his local community and to the platforms that want to prevent that kind of face for a conservative movement. But more than just examining the local conservative podcast scene, Ferris's politics and coverage demonstrate a major flaw within the conservative media atmosphere. That issue being the distrust that Ferris and other conservatives hold in modern media and other mainstream institutions being taken as self-justified, and unfortunately, it is used as a framing device that is rarely discarded. From that distrust, a larger narrative of persecution can be established, and that is no more evident than in how Ferris responded to the search of Mar-A-Lago. On August 8, 2022, the Federal Bureau of Investigation searched the former president's home at Mar-A-Lago and seized multiple classified documents along with presidential records that former President Trump had been repeatedly asked to return to the federal government under several statutes. More specifically, the FBI was seizing these documents in an attempt to enforce the Presidential Records Act of 1973, which according to the National Archives requires that, quote, any records created or received by the president as part of his constitutional, statutory, or ceremonial duties are the property of the United States government, unquote. In other words, any documents held by the president that are part of his or her constitutional and legal duties as president are the federal government's property and can't be withheld by former presidents without some extenuating circumstance. Sadly for Trump, those circumstances don't apply here. According to an August 12th report by the New York Times, the Department of Justice asserted in their warrant that Title 18, subsections 1519 and 2071 were the basis of their search, with the first subsection addressing the attempt to conceal, destroy, or otherwise alter documents with, quote, intent to impede, obstruct, or influence the investigation or proper administration of any matter within the jurisdiction of any department or agency of the United States, unquote. Meaning that on the first level of statutory authority, the FBI had reason to believe that Trump was attempting to or was willing to conceal the documents he had in his possession, which were already illegally in his possession. When examining these facts in the larger context of the raid in legalese, it would not be hard to think that the basis of the raid was a genuine concern about the proper ownership of government materials and the law's ability to check former executives in their ability to claim said documents under the law. By contrast, consider how Ferris inserts partisanship into his analysis and asserts that, much like Liz Cheney's concession speech, the investigation into Donald Trump's holding of federal documents is an element of political theater, along with the January 6th committee.
And we are back with Speechless on Cities 92.9. Thank you guys for joining me this Saturday afternoon. As always, please text or call in at 09-451-9299. I have our text line open now, and I want to know what you guys think. Should Liz Cheney have won? Is she right? I don't think so. But if I'm wrong, tell me. Tell me why I'm wrong. I want to hear it. Because we have a weird sector. We have a weird division in our Republican Party right now. And I don't understand why we have this. I mean, we were all very united under Trump. 97% of during the majority of Trump's stay in office, 97% of Republicans supported Donald J. Trump. And then January 6th comes along, and January 6th, no, there shouldn't a breaching of the Capitol and everything, but they aren't asking the right questions in the January 6th committee. I would have no problem with January 6th committee if it was actually nonpartisan, if it was 100% actually nonpartisan, because if it was nonpartisan, we'd be asking questions like, why did Nancy Pelosi deny extra police at the Capitol on that day? Why did she deny that? Was it set up so that they knew something like this would happen? Why were there buses of people that kind of just showed up out of nowhere that seemed to be escorted by police to go into the Capitol? Huh? Why is that? Nobody's asking those questions in our January 6th committee, and that's how we know that this is political theater. That is how we know that this is political theater. It's absolutely absurd. We have a government that is wasting our money on disgusting productions. Another way that they've wasted our money is actually, and I wasn't able to cover this last week because I was not here, and I'm sorry about that. But the FBI raid on Trump's home. It's insane. This is insane that the FBI raided, unprecedented that the FBI raided Trump's home. I know you guys have probably heard a lot about this, a lot about the FBI raid, but it is, I really could not, it's unfathomable to me that this would even happen, that they occupied his home when he wasn't even there. That's a big thing that I felt like not enough people were talking about either. Everybody was just talking about how crazy it was, period. I think it's even, the worst part about it is the fact that nobody was even there. None of the residents were even there to be like, to look over the warrant, it seems planned that way, that they wouldn't have to like knock on the door and have Trump there, and for them to basically just occupy his entire home and go through all of their things without anybody even being able to watch over and say, hey, like, why are you looking through that or anything like that? So that alone is crazy. I also do have a clip here. I thought this was insane to me that we have these intelligence agencies that are acting unchecked. We have the FBI, we have the DOJ they're bureaucracies. They're not elected. They aren't elected. They are honest, and I've said this before on this show. I think our intelligence agencies could quite possibly, they are a bigger threat to us than radical progressivism ever could be. Because they don't operate even on a political agenda or to hold power. They have an established power through our government, and they're not elected. So they're not beholden to anybody but those that write their paychecks. So they're beholden to those in power.
With regard to the claims about January 6th, there is a lot of gish gallop and not all of it will be addressed here, but for the sake of brevity and accuracy, it should be noted that when there was a request by Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund for security, it was not delayed or vetoed by the Speaker's office. In testimony before the United States Senate, House Sergeant-at-Arms Paul Irving noted that he only alerted congressional leadership once Sund had told him on January 6th that the situation was deteriorating and they might need more guards. It is further worth noting that this officer did not wait for congressional input before he tried to get help. Pelosi did not, as Ferris would like to believe, attempt to block support for Capitol security. But that is neither here nor there. With regard to the raid itself, while Trump is the first president to have his property searched, the search was not engaging in any particular malfeasance as he suggests. During the raid, lawyers for Trump were alerted to the warrant's presence, and though sealed, the warrant would be released to the public for consideration on August 12th, more than 8 days before Ferris released his podcast response to the raid. It should not be surprising that Trump's property was searched when he was not present. Remember, Trump was suspected of attempting to conceal documents from investigators and had a previous history of destroying documents even when he was in office. As far back as May of 2021, the National Archives and Records Administration had been trying to get documents back from Trump, who illegally held onto the property. It wasn't until January of 2022 that 15 boxes were retrieved by the archives, but even then, not all the documents were returned. Which is why an investigation involving the Department of Justice was opened up into Trump's handling of the documents as early as April of 2022. This was not new. And while it is understandable to be skeptical of those in the intelligence and law enforcement bureaucracies of the country, it is critical to provide actual context for what was happening and why. The raid into Trump's home was the product of nearly a year of conflict and demands for Trump to follow the explicit letter of the law, and he failed to do so. Moving forward, Ferris continues, integrating the reaction by liberal celebrities with the raid itself, seeming to suggest that the raid and the reaction from figures like Stephen Colbert were indicative of a larger societal problem among liberals, and that said problem creates a threat to the safety of all citizens.
But that's the way it is. Anyways, I went off on a bit of a tangent. Going back to the Trump raid, the left was reacting to this in a very, very strange way, considering kind of how scary it is that the FBI raided a former president's home, of which he wasn't even at when they raided it. But here's Stephen Colbert when he heard this news. This scared me, honestly. Here's Stephen Colbert.
Be hot outside, but in here, it's Christmas.
It's Christmas?
Because yesterday, we all got the present we wanted. FBI agents raided Mar-A-Lago. Oh, wow.
He's cheering and like kissing to the crowd about this. And what is that giggle?
That's the most beautiful sentence America has ever produced.
Oh my God. He says that's the most beautiful sentence America has ever produced. No. Aren't you scared that the FBI, Trump was right. He said it when he was in office. They don't want me. They want you. I'm just in the way. That's what Trump said. And that's really what it is. I mean, there were people that were just peacefully protesting on January 6th that got FBI agents showing up to their house. It's absurd. It is absurd how the left acts like this. Do they not realize that this could happen to them as well? I was on Paul Garcia's show. You guys should all go. I know Paul was on my show about 2 weeks ago, right around the same time I went on his show as well. And him and I talked about like kind of what socialists want, and why I'm not for that, but where I could see socialist ideology playing a part in society. I know this sounds really weird, but let me explain. Because I am not a socialist by any means. But what I explained on Paul's show is that socialists and socialist ideology pushes power and economy decisions made from the top down in government. So we have so to a socialist, it would be good to have a large amount of power from our federal government and less as you go down. I'm the opposite. I think that we should have our local governments having much more control and power than our federal government, and it should go bottom up. And so what I'm getting to when it comes to the FBI raid with this is that to a socialist, yes, this would be something to celebrate, because it would mean that from our federal government and our federal agencies, they have a large amount of unchecked power. This is what they want. But it's still weird to me that it doesn't scare them because, well, actually, no, it's not weird to me as I think about it even just right now on air. It's not weird to me because they know that those people in power, those agencies, will only go after us because of who writes their paychecks. A lot of questions I was hearing on social media and from people when the FBI raid happened is why weren't they going? Why is Hunter Biden? Why is he not being raided? There's an abundance of evidence to say that he should be raided. Why isn't? Why weren't the Clintons raided like this for the emails lost and everything? Why aren't all these other people? Well, it's because those are the people that are running the show. Those are your producers of this political theater. Those are the producers. They're the ones saying lights, camera, action. I also had a lot of questions like when it comes to the Trump raid, what were they actually looking for? Because it seemed very vague for them to just say classified documents. In fact, Rep. Adam Kinzinger, I'm sorry for any of you out there who is your current rep, don't worry, it'll change soon, commented on the calls for the Mar-A-Lago affidavit to be released to the public, and he said some information should not be released if it puts lives at risk. He also stated that some documents in the Mar-A-Lago raid may be, quote, so classified they cannot be revealed. He appeared on CNN on Friday to discuss the FBI search of former President Donald Trump's Florida residence, during which 11 sets of classified documents were seized. According to court records, in response, Trump and his allies have called for the affidavit used in the search to be released to the public. Now, here's the thing, is for them to say classified documents, that really doesn't make sense, because technically, when a president is in office, he has unilateral authority to declassify any document he wants. He doesn't have to go through, he doesn't have to sign a paper. There's no trail to say what is classified and what is not classified. He actually under the President Trump White House, he had a running rule that because oftentimes he would go back to the residence and take some of his work back to his residence in the East Wing. And there was a rule that everybody just kind of knew that if he took a document out of the West Wing into the East Wing, it was automatically therefore declassified. He didn't have to say anything. He didn't have to let anybody know. That was just kind of the rule. So maybe people want to change the rules on what makes something classified or declassified, but that's not the argument you can have in this case, because Trump technically could say all these documents that were taken from him were at one point declassified by him, and so thus declassified now. That's exactly what he could do. There is no legal standing to say that they were seizing classified documents, because technically he has a legal loophole to just say that all of these were declassified anyways.
The reality is much more complicated than what Ferris presents. There was an additional layer to the search, namely the issue of declassification, which, while broad in its implied power for the president, is not without limits, and still requires a process through which the president must go. As explained by the Congressional Research Service, there are codes and executive orders that restrict and influence the declassification of sensitive materials. Under U.S. Code Title 32, subsection 2000.11, current statutory law primarily gives original classification authority to the agency that created the document. The president may, at times, declassify information, and he does have broad authority to do so, but he does have to explain specifics about the documents he's releasing and has to consider the implications of those documents. He can't wave his hands and just claim declassification, and considering it was later revealed that the FBI seized documents relating to nuclear secrets, that is probably a good thing. Not only that, but the issue of classified documents is primarily based off the DOJ raising the possibility of the Espionage Act being applied to Trump's mishandling of classified materials, but even without the documents being classified, Trump would still be in legal jeopardy because of Sections 2071 and 1519 of Title 18, as well as the Presidential Records Act. The classification is just the icing on the cake. Ferris finishes his argument after being confronted by a texter who calls him a liar, using a statement by Trump to argue that corruption motivated the raid and insinuate that America is becoming a so-called third world country. To Ferris, the raid serves only to stain Trump, and that the media has a vested interest in smearing Trump through this raid, and that it is backfiring both politically and strategically.
And we're back here with Speechless on Cities 92.9. I'm your host, Kev. Great to be talking to you guys this Saturday afternoon from 2 to 3. You know, I actually did receive a text during the break from a heckler. Feel free to text or call in at 309-451-9299. I want to know what you guys have to say. A lot of what we've been talking today is about the political theater we've been seeing with Liz Cheney, the January 6th committee, and now this FBI raid of President Trump's home. I got a text in that said, that is a lie. Okay. What did I say? Texter, please tell me what I said that was a lie. And maybe like just like actually try to refute what I'm saying, because I can't. I want to be told if I'm wrong about something, tell me why I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I need you to be able to tell me what I said that was wrong and why it was wrong, because that's how we have discussion. That's how discussion works. But getting back to, until I get that, again, anybody else, if you have any thoughts, text or call in at 309-451-9299. That's the number, 309-451-9299. Love to hear what you guys got to say. If you call in, I'll bring you right on air and we can have a conversation right here. But we're talking about the FBI Trump raid, which is just absolutely absurd. I don't know if you guys had a chance to read the statement by Donald Trump a little over a week ago when this raid was conducted. The statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States, reads, "These are dark times for our nation as my beautiful home, Mar-A-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided, and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before. After working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, the unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. It is a prosecutorial misconduct, the weaponization of the justice system, and an attack by radical left Democrats who desperately don't want me to run for president in 2024, especially based on recent polls, and who will likewise do anything to stop Republicans and conservatives in the upcoming midterm elections. Such an assault could only take place in broken third world countries. Sadly, America has now become one of those countries, corrupt at a level not seen before. They even broke into my safe. What is the difference between this and Watergate, where operatives broke into the Democratic National Committee? Here in reverse, Democrats broke into the home of the 45th President of the United States." He goes on with a little bit more, asking about all of his the times he's been persecuted politically for Russia, the impeachments, everything like that, and then asking how was Hillary allowed to delete her emails and not even be subpoenaed by Congress. So much and he talks about America's bureaucratic corruption, which is something I love to talk about on this show, is the bureaucratic corruption. There are a few things I want to point out, though, when it comes to the statement, and a few questions I have for you listeners out there. The first being, Trump says that this is an assault that could only take place in a broken third world country. Do you think we're on our way to that? Or do you think we're in that? Are we a broken third world country now because of our corrupt government? I don't know. I really don't know. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that. Are we in that? There's another thing that Donald J. Trump says in this statement, is he says that these Democrats desperately don't want me to run for president in 2024. You know, I've been well, not even wishy-washy. I've been pretty clear I don't think Donald Trump should run in 2024. But I do think, and this is unconfirmed, this is just my opinion, my analysis of the situation, I would not be surprised if this raid was done not because of any suspected criminal activity, not because of any type of actual justice. I think this was a form of political theater that was so that the news could run headlines of Donald J. Trump has home raided for potential criminal activity. There doesn't need to be anything that comes out of this. There doesn't need to be any charges. We may never even get to see the documents regarding what the purpose of this raid actually was, because I don't think there actually was anything of significance. I think that the purpose of this raid was so that they could run headlines that say Donald Trump had home raided. Because what this does is those that are not necessarily politically active and informed, because for whatever reason, they'll see that and think, well, he must be a criminal then, because criminals have their homes raided by the FBI. I think that's the purpose of it, but I think that it's having a backwards effect. I think it's acting differently than the Democrats had and our justice system had intended. In fact, actually, Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media platform, rised in popularity significantly. Apparently, it had 550% more downloads after the raid. More and more people are flocking towards Trump. And Trump isn't going to stand down and just let this happen. According to this, there's actually claims that this could be pushing Trump to announce his run in 2024 sooner. According to I'm reading the article right here. According to the New York Post, there's an increasingly widely held belief among Trump's friends and hangers-on that the energy and outrage generated by the federal search is the perfect springboard for an announcement in the month's midterm elections in November. Michael Caputo, a former Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs in the Department of Health and Human Services, he said, in the days after the raid, we saw all fundraising records broken. This isn't my first rodeo. I know what the signs look like. Since the raid, Trump's Political Action Committee has raked in millions of dollars in new fundraising. Our Save America Political Action Committee had reported more than $100 million cash on hand before the raid. So they're raking in money because of this. People are PO'd. People are not happy about what the government is doing right now, and they're flocking towards Trump. They think Trump is the guy to do this. Do you think Trump is our best bet in 2024? You think he is? Text or call in at 309-451-9299. I want to know, because I'm more of a DeSantis guy, I got to be honest. I think Trump did amazing things for this country, but I think DeSantis is more polished, has less to go after him for, and is a quality candidate. He's right now the governor of Florida. I think he could be America's governor, the president of the United States. I think he'd be the best bet, but Trump has a lot of momentum right now because of this raid. According to Huffington Post, Trump actually is, this was breaking news today, Trump is threatening major motion based on the Fourth Amendment due to the FBI search. According to a post on Twitter, the Fourth Amendment will soon be filed concerning the illegal break-in of my home, Mar-A-Lago, right before the ever-important midterm elections. My rights, together with the rights of all Americans, have been violated at a level rarely seen before in our country. Remember, they even spied on my campaign. The greatest witch hunt in United States history has been going on for 6 years. To the scammers, it should not be allowed to continue. According to the Huffington Post, several legal experts scoffed at the possibility of any successful major motion by Trump based on the amendment. Former U.S. Attorney Harry stated in a Twitter post that Trump was likely referring to a motion to suppress evidence, which people do after, not before, charges are filed. And he'll surely lose, according to them. I'm interested in battle could go. I don't know. The only reason why I think that it won't, because you're suing the United States. If there's anybody who could do it, I think it is Trump.
The problem with this assertion of electoral success, aside from not being supported by public polling, which has Trump's unfavorability at 54%, is that it ignores the seriousness of the raid itself. Electoral politics, considerations of celebrity reactions, and Hail Mary legal insinuations about supposed Fourth Amendment lawsuits are no replacement for a strong and contextualized examination of legal reality. Trump was the first president in United States history to be raided. That much is true. But why he is being investigated and to what degree he plays a role in his own legal woes are factors that should have been examined from the very beginning of that podcast. With such a historic and complicated moment breaking out before the American public, it is critical that claims made by both the DOJ and those they are investigating are taken with a grain of salt and in the spirit of evidence-based consideration. Sadly, in his coverage of the search, Kevin Phares has insisted upon partisan grievance, deference to Republican political interests, and a distrust of the media as alternatives to more nuanced coverage. While I do expect that some reply may come in the future, I do hope that reply will be more nuanced than what was presented in that episode.